Hello everyone, my name is Marian. In today's video, we are going to do the X-ray registry review for patient care. This is going to be part one. It's going to be on ethical and legal aspects. And if you do decide to go back to school to become a CT tech, feel free to check out my playlist because I do have a CT registry review, but I will put this in an X-ray registry review playlist. If you go to my channel, just click on X-ray registry review. You can also use this for your CQR if you are taking that exam or assessment every 10 years with ARRT. But if you're not with ARRT, you can still use this for any registry boards that you're studying for X-ray. Now, in this section, I'm following the ARRT guidelines, but like I was saying, this information can still be used no matter which X-ray boards you're taking. This is like a national review for X-ray. So for patient care, there will be 22 questions. And for this section, we are going to talk about patient's rights, the consent forms such as informed, oral, and applied, your HIPAA, your American Hospital Association, Patient Care Partnership, privacy, DNR, access to information. We're going to talk about things like living will, healthcare proxy, advanced directives, what goes on for research purposes with patients. So that's what we are going to talk about in this section. Okay, this is the radiography content specification for the X-ray board exam. This is under ARRT, but like I was saying, you can still use the information that I'm going to give you for any national X-ray registry test, no matter if you are for radiologic technologists, your LMRT or NCT. This is very helpful. So for this section, we are going to be focused on patient care. So let me see if I can highlight it. So we're going to focus on patient care in this section. I will make more videos. Just let me know in the comment box or give the video a thumbs up if you want me to make more patient care videos, because this is just part one. So this section we're going to talk about patient interactions and management. There will be 33 questions for this section, and then keep in mind, depending on when you take this test, it may change. So for patient rights, you have or the patient have the right to view and access their medical records. They have the right to confidentiality, right to privacy, right to be involved in making the decisions during medical diagnosis and treatments, right to obtain their medical diagnosis and records, right to have an interpreter to explain information in the way that they can understand. I know where I work at, we have an interpretation line where we call an interpreter, and there are several languages on that line. So if you think, okay, what if I speak this language and I have a patient who come in who speak the same language as me, do they have someone to interpret? Yes, they have so many languages. I'm telling you, you would not be lost or anything. So that's a good way to make sure that the patient fully understand what you're saying. So a lot of this information I'm going to give it to you to help you on your registry, but also to help you become a better tech as well. And then the patient has a right for advanced directives, meaning a living will, healthcare proxy, and an attorney. We'll break down the terms under advanced directives later on in the video. And then the patient has the right to cultural and spiritual beliefs. So you cannot disrespect their culture, their spiritual beliefs, or deny them of it or because of it. Patient rights continued under this section. We have the right to accept or decline to participate in research studies. So, research is still going on. People participate in research studies for many reasons to try to change something, to try to make something better, to learn more about something, to develop new ideas, new medication, new treatments. new insights. So a lot of times, whenever patients are participating in this, depending on what it is, they have the right to say they want to do it or they don't want to do it. And you also have the right to know about the charges of a medical bill. So it can't be a secret if the patient has a bill for $10,000. Like a lot of times, whenever I work in radiology, especially when I'm working in MRI because I'm an MRI tech, sometimes the MRI scans can be expensive. So sometimes, whenever I am trying to send for a patient, the nurse may say, just give us a moment. The patient is talking over their bill or asking questions about their bill. So most of the time, if they are alert, they already know like an estimate or an exact amount of what this bill is going to cost if they get this type of scan or this type of procedure or medications. Then they also have the right to know the hospital policies in relation to their medical diagnosis and treatments. Now we're going to talk about consent forms. This section, we're going to talk about informed consent. So, informed consent is a document that provides potential research participants or patients with information about a procedure, the study, or treatment, enabling them to make an informed decision about whether to participate or agree to treatment. Patient must be a legal age to sign. Patient must be in the right mental state to sign, so they cannot be unconscious, whether it is a medical unconscious or because they took a medication that made them unconscious. They have to be fully conscious to understand and sign this form. Patient must be fully informed of the risks, benefits, treatments, and alternative tests. So if you are doing a study on a patient and you know for a fact this is going to cause, let's say, hallucination. Make sure the patient know that after whenever they undergo this study or research, they may hallucinate. So it's just different things. You cannot hide what's really going to happen or what could happen. And then you also have exam and procedure must be explained in a way that the patient understands it in layman's terms. So you don't have to always use medical terminology that people do not understand. Sometimes instead of saying, uh, if you say, okay, the patient had a syncope or episode, when they're fainting, just say you may faint. You don't syncope. You don't have to say you may syncope. They're gonna say, okay, what are you talking about? Just say you may faint. And then also the procedure and risk must fully be explained by the x-ray tech or radiologist. The risk of infections, the risk of bruising, the risk of bleeding. If you work in a hospital, there are times where a radiology nurse may consent the patient. So if that is the case, then the radiology nurse will also explain the risk of infections, risk of bruising, risk of bleeding. Now we're talking about oral consent under consent forms. Oral consent is the patient verbalizing that they agree to a procedure or treatment rather than signing a written form. This is also known as verbal consent. The patient's verbal agreement is documented. Very important for a patient to understand the procedure, risk, and benefits before consenting. Whenever you are documenting that they did agree, document the date, the time. Make sure that you have all of the information under your facility policy where, what has to be documented, especially if it's an oral consent. Now we're talking about implied consent. This is under the assumption that if the patient was conscious, they would approve whatever care that is needed, especially if it's going to benefit them medically. Patient care is still provided even though the patient is unconscious. So if a patient is like a CPR patient, passed out, they're not breathing, I'm sure the patient, unless they have a DNR, and we'll talk about that later on, But if they do not have a DNR, whether you cannot resuscitate them, then I'm sure if a patient is unconscious or you have to perform CPR, they will want you to, because they didn't specify that they don't want you to. And or in other words, if a patient is unconscious and they need a chest x-ray because they have like a wound on their chest or a gunshot wound and they're going to need surgery, I'm pretty sure if the patient was conscious, they would want you to do the chest x-ray so that you can take them to surgery so that you can stop the bleeding. Now, what is HIPAA? HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. The patient has the right to file a complaint if someone violates HIPAA. Patients are allowed to view their medical records. Policies must be in place to protect a patient's information. Patients should know when or if their information will be shared and sign a form. So whenever I go to like different hospitals, I'm not sure about clinics. I've been to a clinic probably maybe two years ago, maybe even three, because I had to get a scan myself, and I know the clinic didn't ask me if I wanted to sign a form to share my information. Well, at least I don't think they did, but that was 3 years ago. But now when I go to like a hospital for like routine physicals, routine exams, they have me sign a form if I want to share it amongst other hospitals. Like if I go to a hospital that participate in patient information sharing. And then you also have HIPAA, which was passed by the U.S. Congress. This is regulated by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And keep in mind, patient has to consent for their information to be shared and released. Patient can monitor and restrict who has their information. When they have their form, it's going to say pretty much, okay, you can get access to this information. Put the name of another person who you want to get access to this information. And then now we have the American Hospital Association, or AHA. This is a not-for-profit organization that represents hospitals, healthcare systems, and other providers in the United States. It works to improve healthcare and advocate for policy changes. So if someone knows that a policy is outdated, there has been like more research studies coming out, need for improvement, then this is what this organization is going to help. It's going to help improve healthcare, advocate for a policy that is outdated to be changed. Now we have Patient Care Partnership. This is a brochure created by the American Hospital Association, or AHA, that informs patients about their rights and responsibilities during their hospital stay. So if a patient is, pretty tight on money, or just don't understand what's going on, or just don't see the need to have something done, then they can deny it. For example, if a patient come in for a foot pain, or if they come in because, they have a headache or they have a finger cut, they can deny that they don't want a chest x-ray. They may think, okay, why am I getting a chest x-ray if my foot is hurting, or, so they can deny that. Or if a patient, you know, have, let's say, have chest pain or whatever, if they don't want to have the chest x-ray because they don't want to have it, they had it 2 days ago, and they know they have chest pain that comes and goes, and it's just their decision, they can deny the chest x-ray. Yes, the chest x-ray is better for them to see why their chest is hurting 2 days later, but if they think that they don't want it and they had it 2 days ago, then they can deny it. And then you also have the patient care partnership. This is replaced by the patient's bill of rights, which is the older name for it. And it provides a clear, concise, and explanation of what patients can expect in terms of care, their environment, the involvement of their treatment. Patient privacy. The protection of the patient's protected health information, or PHI, is going to allow patient privacy with their medical records, x-ray images, and other information that can identify a patient of their condition. So if a patient came in for a pelvic x-ray and something is seen on it, let's say if like this big fibroid for whatever reason was seen on the plain x-ray, or if something was seen in that area where the radiologist like, okay, we need a CT scan or we need an MRI scan. You see a big fibroid in the patient's pelvic area, which is a benign tumor, you cannot, as a tech or as any healthcare provider, or, post their images without their permission, especially if it can be easily identified. This may vary depending on what policy or company you work for, but I know a lot of times if patient, and then what if this patient has this medical record because they can't obtain their medical record. So if the patient took home the medical records where this x-ray scan or this CT and MRI scan show this large fibroid, if they can identify it, then that's a problem because now they do not want their images on the internet. But you can, it depends on what company you work for, you can put x-rays out if it's not easily identified that this is the patient Jane Doe or information. So now we have some tips. Keep everything confidential, secure the patient's electronic health information, hide and close out of your screen if someone is walking by, lock your computer when you are stepping away. Extent of care or DNR. Do not resuscitate order, DNR. This information is located in the patient's chart. The patient and the physician makes the agreement or the power of attorney if the patient is unconscious. I think I've had one time where a patient was DNR, and this is like one of the jobs I've worked at because I am a travel tech. But the patient was DNR, and I guess whoever was taking care of the patient or over the patient medically did not pay attention to the patient chart because the patient like had a code where they just, where they wasn't breathing, and the medical staff did CPR and brought them back to life. The family, the family is upset because the patient is not in the best condition. It's already have been known by the patient, by the family member, put in their chart for everyone to know the patient is a DNR patient. They didn't want the patient to come back. So just pay attention to the patient's chart, um, about things like this, and also know what this means if you had to be asked about it. Now we have advanced directive. Patients will provide directives that is relating to their medical care before they are unconscious or incapacitated. Family members, attorney, and doctor will receive copies of this advanced directive because it has to be documented that this is what the patient want, or this is who the patient want. Durable power of attorney. The patient will allow someone else to make decisions regarding their medical care if they are not able to communicate. The person that the patient chooses can sign informed consents for them. You have your living will, a legal document that allows individuals to express their wishes regarding medical treatment, especially at the end of life when they are no longer able to make decisions for themselves. So a lot of times whenever you're younger, you hear that such and such, your grandma or your grandfather has a living will. When you hear about living wills, most of the time you think of money. Put in the comment box if you knew before watching this video other ways of having a living will. So there are other ways of having a living will other than money. The type of treatments that the patient would like is CPR, dialysis, breathing tubes, if they want to be on a respiratory vent, if they are not doing well. This is a form of a living will as well. Then you have healthcare proxy. This is a legal document that allows you to designate someone as your representative to make medical decisions if you are unable to do so. Patient right to access their information. The patient has the right to access their protected health information or PHI, the right to obtain a copy of their medical records, the right to request corrections if needed. So if their doctor reached out to the patient, went over their results, and say for instance, you took an x-ray of a right hip, but the patient told you it was their left hip, then the doctor will go over these results with the patient, and then the patient has the right to request that they have x-rays of the correct hip. You know, you did not take x-rays of the correct hip. So they have the right to have this corrected, have a new report sent out. And then they have the right to know how their information is shared. They want to know, are you going to share this on social media, Facebook, Instagram, used to be called Twitter, now it's called X, TikTok. They want to know where their information is going. They have that right. They also have the right to a timely response. Companies must respond to a patient's request within 30 days. Also, if the patient is in the ER, they have a right, to have their exam completed within a certain amount of time. So if you work at a facility or a hospital where the ER times, turnaround time for results is, let's say, 4 hours, you cannot go past that 4 hour mark. The patient has to have their x-ray done within 4 hours. And this is also like a review of the patient's right to their health information. They have a right to their electronic health records, mobile device apps. So some companies will have like an app where the patient can um, preview their x-rays, their CT scans, the billing. So they have a right to a mobile device app, laboratory, hospital, web-based portals. They can check their results on the portal. They can check their billing statement. They have health insurance plans. They have the right to this. Physicians, pharmacies, medical staff, they have the right to know who is taking care of them, what's going to be done, what medication is going to be given. Research participation. Patients have rights to an informed consent, so they must sign an informed consent regarding the risks, the benefits, any alternatives. Patient rights is to right for research. Patient rights is right to withdraw from the research, right to privacy and confidentiality. So everyone should know about why or what this patient is participating in. Right to information. They have a right to know and have a copy of what's going to happen during this research, the after effects, right to respect and dignity. So you cannot just disrespect someone if they decide that they do not want to go on with the research or if they do not want to participate. You have to show them respect. You have to be understanding of their decision. Also, right to access treatment, right to refuse participation. All right, that's it for this review lesson. This is part one. There are several topics I can go over for the X-ray registry review. Just let me know in the comment box if you would like a part two. Feel free to give the video a thumbs up if you found this to be helpful and want more videos. Also, feel free to subscribe and like the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video.